Hello, everybody. My name is Paris Scott. I'm the Legal Director at Parse Equality Center. Thank you so much for joining this recorded webinar. My goal today is to walk you through how to fill out the Census 2020 questionnaire. I will also talk about the race question and identifying your ethnicity, your origin in the race question. If you're from an Iranian background, Iranian origin, I will let you know where to write in Iranian. And I also want to point out that Parse Equality Center and PAYA have launched a Write in Iranian campaign. I urge everybody to go to www.writeiniranian.com, where we talk about the importance of writing your ethnicity as Iranian. We talk about the reason why we urge you to do that. And today, my goal is to just tell you where it is in the questionnaire, also go over every single screen of the questionnaire, and hopefully make this process a bit easier for you if you haven't done so already. So let's go over the census questionnaire online. The first screen that you get when you go to the my2020census.gov is the welcome screen, where you can start filling out the questionnaire. Usually you should have received a letter in the mail. It's an invitation to fill out the census form, and on that letter there is a unique census ID, a 12-digit census ID, and you would enter the census ID here. You would log in and start filling out the census questionnaire. Now, a lot of our community members have already contacted us and asked us, what do we do if we don't have that letter? Maybe they got it and they threw it out. They thought it's junk mail. It's no problem at all. If you look at the screen here, it says if you do not have a census ID, click here. So this is where you would click if you don't have a census ID. It takes you to a screen where it asks you where you live, whether you live in the US or somewhere else, and the next screen will allow you to fill out your address. If you have the ID, you enter your ID and your address will pop up automatically. If you don't have the ID, you have to manually fill out your address. The census website verifies your address because they need to make sure this is a valid address. Once the address is verified, you click submit and you start to fill out the actual questionnaire. As you can see, here you have the steps that you have to follow. The address verification is already done. Now you will be starting to do the household questions, and then the people questions, and then the final questions. So this is the first question about getting to the household questions about who you are. Identify yourself. What is your first name, what is your last name, and your phone number. Now, it is really important to mention that the census data is completely confidential. So your information will not be shared with anybody outside the Census Bureau. And the reason they want your phone number is just in case they need to contact you about some data in the census questionnaire. They would use that, but they would never ever share your information, your phone number, or any other data you entered in the questionnaire with any outside party. So as you can see, census questions started. You're in the census questions, and then they ask you questions about the people living in your household. So you start with this, and then once this is done, you move on to the people living in your household. Start button takes you to the next slide, and here, this is a very important screen, even though it's just one field in the screen. It asks you to state how many people live or stay at your residence on or about April 1st, 2020. Including yourself. So why do they ask this question? Because it helps them to count the entire US population and ensure that they count people where they live most of the time. So that's the key definition, most of the time. So here you would enter the number of people living with you most of the time. Maybe they're not living with you all the time, but that doesn't matter. As long as they're living there most of the time, you enter that number. they have already registered the name you've entered. Let's say you've entered Ahmed Ahmadi, they already have that name. So that's already there. And you said 2 people, so they have another box here asking you to enter the second person's name. Here, Reza Rezai, you enter the name. And there's a button here down there that says add another person. So in case you realized, oh, in the last screen I said 2, but oh, I just remember 3 people live here most of the time. Here you can add that extra person. Next slide. This again shows how important it is for the Census Bureau to count every person living in your household. They even state that. They say, we do not want to miss any people who might have stayed at your residence on April 1st, 2020. And they give you examples. So children, not necessarily yours, children, it could be foster children, newborn babies. If your baby is born on March 31st, 2020, you need to put that baby's name in there, in that household, number of household in that census questionnaire. Relatives, your parents, let's say your parents live with you 8 months a year. 4 months they live with your siblings, 8 months they live with you. So we said the definition is people who live with you most of the time. And in that case, your parents live with you most of the time, so you need to make sure that you add them to your census questionnaire. So they're double checking with you and they're saying, are you sure only Ahmed Ahmadi and Reza Rezai live here? Are you sure none of these other people live here? So here you say, yes, nobody else lives here. So were there any additional people at, that you did not already list? You say, no, I kind of get it. I understand that if somebody lives with me, most of the time I have to add them, but really these are the only 2 people. So you go to the next slide. And here they ask, the type of ownership of the house. Is your house, apartment owned by you or someone in this household with a mortgage? Is it owned by you or someone else in this household, free and clear? Are you renting, or are you just staying there without paying anything? So why are they asking you questions about ownership? This helps the US Census Bureau produce statistics about home ownership and renting. The rates of homeownership serve as one indicator of the nation's economy. They also help with administering housing programs, planning, and decision-making. So that's the reason why they asked you this question. The next slide, it states who actually owns this person. Is it Ahmed Ahmadi or Reza Rezai? And you answer that accordingly. And so they just want to identify a central figure in this household, and that's the reason they asked this question. Then we go to the next slide, and the good news is you're done with the household questions. As you can see, this check mark says you're done, and you've already moved from household questions to people questions. So you've already done half of your census questionnaire. The people question basically talks about the people living in the household, the ones that you've identified. So if you look down, you have Ahmed Ahmadi, you have Reza Rezai. You can start from whoever you want. Let's say you want to start with Reza Rezai. If you are not Reza Rezai, you may want to ask Reza Rezai to sit behind the computer and hit start and fill out the section that pertains to him. So here it says, how is Reza Rezai related to Ahmed Ahmadi? They want to know the relationship between the people living in the same household. And why do they ask this question? This allows the Census Bureau to develop data about families, households, and other groups. Relationship data is used in planning and funding government programs that support families, including people raising children alone. So again, all this is for funding purposes. They really are not trying to be nosy. They just want to know the funding available for the area you're funding that they need to provide for the area, for the location that you're living. As you can see, there are lots of different types of relationships, same-sex marriage, same-sex partnership, adoption, so on and so forth. It goes all the way down, grandchildren, parent-in-law, other relatives. So in this example, Reza Rezai is the roommate of Ahmed Ahmadi. So that's the selection here. And if you can't find the relationship here, there's always other non-relative or other relatives. So you can, they provide that flexibility. Next slide. They ask for the sex of Reza Rezai. So unfortunately, they have only provided male and female. Maybe 2030, they would provide other, but there's only a male or female selection available. And why does the Census Bureau ask this question about sex? It allows them to create statistics about males and females, which can be used in planning, funding government programs. This data can also be used to enforce laws, regulations, and policies against discrimination. So again, you see, it's all for the good of the society. These questions are meant to help people, maybe help females who are not catered to in a particular geographic area. It is important that you identify your race. Next slide, it asks for the birthday. What is the birthday of Reza Rezai? Again, you need to put in the date, and then it actually calculates the year for you. And they do ask that question because they want to better understand the size and characteristics of different age groups. Agencies use this data to plan and fund government programs that support specific age groups, including children and older adults. So again, it's about funding. If they know that there are a lot of older people living in a particular area, they may think about giving funding to your county to open a house for senior citizens, to open a senior citizen care center, or provide more hospitals in your area, in your county, in your city. So that's the reason they asked for the age. The next slide. So this is where we're getting to the race question and ethnicity and background. So the question is Reza Rezai of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? In our example, Reza Rezai happens to be a person who is ethnically Iranian. His national origin is from Iran. Now, Reza Rezai may be a US citizen, he may be a green card holder, or he may be a student here, or he may be undocumented. The Census Bureau does not care about your immigration status. In fact, there is no citizenship question on the census form. There was this administration was pushing on that question to be on the form, but it is not. So they will not ask you whether you're a citizen or not. And it is very important to note that you do not need to be a citizen or a lawful permanent resident to fill out the census questionnaire. The census questionnaire is for everybody, regardless of their immigration status, who live in the United States. So in this case, Reza Rezai is not of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. The next page talks about race, and that's where we want to emphasize, and that's where our Right in Iranian campaign comes in, and we urge people from Iranian background, from Iranian origin, to self-identify the race they feel that they are. So if they self-identify as white, then by all means click the white box. If they there are many different boxes actually provided on the census questionnaire. If you go to the next or scroll down the page when you're on the website, there's Chinese people. Maybe there's an Iranian Chinese person that's half Chinese, half Iranian. There's also other Asian. For example, they give some examples here: Pakistani, Cambodian. There's also some other race. There is no box for Middle Eastern, North African, MENA race. So if you believe if you don't self-identify as white, you can, for example, click some other race and write in your origin here. So in this case, Reza Rezai self-identifies as white, but it's very important that here he writes his nationality, his national origin. And in this case, it's Iranian. It is very important because we want to make sure that Iranians get counted. And why So why is it important? Why does the census even ask for race? They ask this question to allow them to create statistics about race and to analyze other statistics within racial groups. This data helps federal agencies monitor compliance with anti-discrimination provisions, such as those in the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act. So if we write in Iranian, we will be protected. We will be protected by the Civil Rights Act because we will be identified as an ethnic minority in the United States. We get funding for our programs, we get funding, we get language support. More and more people write in Iranian. You may see forms maybe next year, in 10 years from now, you may see census questionnaires in Farsi, because this year there's no Farsi language support. There are 12 non-English languages, but Farsi is not one of them. So that's why we urge everybody to write in Iranian, to protect themselves against discrimination, to get funding for their programs, to get language support, and so many other benefits. And you can read again more about this on the Pars Paya Write in Iranian campaign on the writeiniranian.com website. So once Reza Rezai identifies his race and writes in his ethnicity, then it's a next button, and Reza Rezai is done. You can see there's this check mark here, and he is done with his part of the census questionnaire. And if you have 4, 5, 6 members in your household, everyone will have their own separate questionnaire, and they will have to hit start, and off they go. Here, for example, Ahmed Ahmadi, let's say, then Ahmed Ahmadi will hit start, and Ahmed Ahmadi will be asked the same questions. What is the sex of this person, and so on and so forth, the birth date. And again, the reason why they're asking these questions is exactly what we discussed for Reza Rezai's purposes. And again, the race for Ahmed Ahmadi, again, this person happens to be from an Iranian background, ethnicity, so it's white Iranian. That's he identifies as white, which is, that's what he identifies at, and that's fine. And you can see that both Reza Rezai, Ahmed Ahmadi have completed, and therefore the people questions have been completed. So you can see it's pretty straightforward. There is one more section, the final question. And again, this has to do with the correct count of people who happen to be in the United States on or about April 1st, 2020. So let's see what this final question, and again, you can see the bar has moved to final questions. It's your last thing you have to answer. And again, they want to make sure that they're counting your household correctly. We would like to make sure everyone is only counted once, they say here. Some people live or stay in more than one place. For example, with a parent, while attending college for a military assignment. So they're giving you examples of people that you may have counted, but maybe they're not living with you most of the time. And so they're asking you if either Ahmed Ahmadi or Reza Rezai fall within these categories, that they are actually not living with you most of the time. So here you have an opportunity to select people that you incorrectly added as part of your household. Okay, so let's say you realize, oh my God, Reza Rezai actually is attending college, and he's gone now a week ago, and you haven't even noticed that he's gone, and now he's gone, and he's not going to be back for another 2 years because he's going to be living on campus. So here you have an opportunity to remove Reza Rezai if he doesn't live with you most of the time. So again, they want an accurate count. However, whenever you're in doubt, count the person, because the Census Bureau has a way to figure out if there are any duplicates. That's why they ask for date of birth. That's why they ask for a full name, and they will look for duplicates, and they have, and that's why they may call you to double check to make sure that people have been counted accurately. So here, there's none of the above. So Reza Rezai and Ahmed Ahmadi both live in that household most of the time, and therefore you hit next, and You are almost finished. All you need to do is hit submit, and your questionnaire is complete, and your duty to fill out the census questionnaire is complete. And that's it's basically as simple as that. And I know that there may be some questions. This is a recorded webinar. People may have questions about their race, their ethnicity, their people who live in their household. They may have questions about why, and maybe confidentiality. Why do we have to fill out all this information? And that's what Parse Equality Center is here for. We are a census questionnaire assistance center, and we are here to answer all these questions. We have a census hotline. It's 408-675-2686, and an email, info@parseequalitycenter.org. Please feel free to email us. We speak Farsi, English, Spanish, French, and other languages, and we're happy to assist you. I also want to point out one more time that we have a Write in Iranian campaign together with Paya, and we urge people who are Iranian or from Iranian origin to write in Iranian, and please feel free to go to our website and become a partner of our campaign. Thank you so much for attending this webinar, and hope to hear from you at our Census Questionnaire Assistance hotline.